got Zavala team in the house. We got Melissa, an amazing guest speaker today. She's going to be talking about all the benefits as a landlord if you have tenants, and as the tenant, what are your rights that you can exercise during COVID-19. Javier, Jesse, and Eder, they're real estate agents up in North County. They get a lot of phone calls from their clients, past clients, asking them what's going on in the real estate world, and they're going to provide us an update. I am Alfonso with the Point Mortgage, the Alfonso Delgadillo lending team, and I'm going to give you guys a quick rundown of what's going on in the lending world. And we're simply just super excited to be back here this week, to talk about real estate and different options that you guys all have during COVID-19, right? So, do we have any people already jumped in the stream here, Sam?
Yeah, it looks like we have 5 people on the stream right now. So usually takes a couple of minutes for people to get it on their notification, so we should be getting more here soon.
Awesome. Let's give it like a minute or so more, get more people on the live stream. We want to make sure that everybody takes advantage of the information we're giving out today for free. And if you guys have any questions, please enter them in the chat. We have Sam Acosta. He's helping make sure that we answer all of your questions. So just type the questions, whether you're watching this on Facebook or through Zoom. There's a chat button that you guys can enter your questions, and we'll make sure that we answer those. Okay, even if it has nothing to do with today's topic, you just have some questions. We'll do the best to answer those questions. Okay, so like I said, I got Javier here, we got Melissa, Eder, and Jesse. Guys, thank you guys for joining us another week. Like I said, this is my team. We just want to give you guys as much information as we can, as we're all going as a nation through some tough times. And I know there's a lot of scarcity, a lot of fear right now, but I promise you one thing, it's going to be okay, and it's going to go by. But in the meantime, it's pretty scary. So we're here to give you that comfort that, we're, it's going to be okay, and to update you in the real estate lending world. And like I said, with renters and landlords. So Jesse, who wants to start off with giving us some updates? What's happening? How is COVID-19 so far impacting the real estate world? What do you guys see?
Hey, Alfonso, how's it going today?
Good, brother. Good, man. Thank you for joining us again.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, it's this situation is definitely affecting us severely. Market has taken a big dive real estate wise. If I can share my screen here. Let me see.
Are you on?
No, I'm like, we switched our host.
Let's see who has theirs enabled.
So I
don't think we can share it right now.
You should be able to share now. We just disabled our main screen share. It should be the screen share button in the middle.
Yeah, it still says it's disabled.
All right. Why don't you continue?
Well, anyways, so last year at the end of March, we had sold 570 properties during the month of March in the county. Last month, we only sold 82, and that's detached homes in the whole San Diego County area. So definitely, we've taken a big hit on sales. Pretty much only 15% have sold of the properties that were listed at the end of March. So currently we have about 493 properties listed in San Diego County, single family homes. That can include also some units that are in age restrictions. But for the most part, these are all single family units. So definitely seeing the difference in numbers here in North County, which is like the 78 corridor, Oceanside, Vista, Escondido, San Marcos. We had 154 sold last month or last year in March, and this we only have 24.
How many in the corridor? many?
24 properties that sold. And so I broke it down from 550 and under because that's the high limit, right? For conventional. And then up to 701, which is the FHA limit. Also, we had 192 listed and only 24 sold. So pretty much up to 750 right now, single family detached homes, about 50 properties have sold in the 78 corridor, which compared to last year in the same time frame, we had 154 and 155.
154 sold last year?
Yes, last year in March.
But I mean, I would say that, you know, those numbers have obviously been affected by COVID-19, but more so too is because of you know, what is it now? We're going on the third week in San Diego County that we've been locked down, right? It was Friday, let me look back. It was Friday,
March 19th.
March 19 that was announced that, hey, everybody needs to stay at home. And then realtors were still showing homes. And then, you know, state came down on you guys on that Saturday, the 21st, I believe, said, hey, you're not exempt from staying home. You have to stay home. You guys are not essential. But thank goodness about a week ago or so, right, Melissa and Javier? When that was lifted.
The only word I can say right now, yeah, was affected, and that is slowed down because we waiting for a lot of information how we can get more listings and show the properties, and like you say, it was locked down. So now it's a lot of guidelines we need to follow, and that's going to make it the transition slow, but it's going to coming back. So like Jesse was mentioned, all these compare numbers. I think soon as we get a more positive news, like it's control, the market is going to start booming like really fast.
Yeah, and so the thing is that properties listed, you know, we had 204 last year in March. This year we had 192. So the listings haven't changed. So what this does say though is that we're switching to, during this thing right now, into a buyer's market, meaning that buyers are going to have a little bit more power on the purchasing side, negotiating, or, you know, getting credits, getting the price that they needed to be at. So that adjustment is going to, people that are ready right now to purchase are going to be able to take advantage of that adjustment.
Absolutely. That's a good thing. I mean, we would have a bigger problem is there's lack of inventory and there's lack of buyers and all that. But I mean, right now, like you just said, I mean, a week ago, the restriction on realtors was lifted. I mean, obviously, you have to have a social distance. You have to show homes differently today. You guys are doing a lot of virtual open houses, virtual stuff. You know, here we are, you know, learning how to do Zoom calls now, Zoom meetings online, right? You know, 2 months ago, we weren't even thinking about doing stuff like that. You know, at least I know I wasn't. So, I mean, things are changing. Rather than being a negative, I think it's a positive because this industry, which I love the most, it's evolving. So yes, Jesse, it'll become a better, it'll be more of a buyer's market, you know. So if you guys are thinking of buying a home, it's, you know, it's going to be some great times. I understand that there's a lot of uncertainty right now with the, you know, people being laid off and furloughed, right? But I think that they're saying that in the U.S., you know, I was reading in the New York Times and, you know, a couple of articles that they do expect this virus to hit its peak this week, right? The most amount of cases will come out and the most unfortunate amount of deaths, the numbers will be out. And this curve is going to start flattening out. So if we can all get back to our normal activities, right, by the end of the month or the first week or the first half of May, this is going to reactivate the economy. People will be going back to work and all that. Where I'm going with this is, you know, like Jesse is saying, there's still inventory. There's still some good times to buy. If you feel financially stable, jump on it because there's going to be some great deals coming up, all right? To update you guys really quick on the mortgage side of things, you know, we are definitely seeing some changes, but the majority of the changes that we're seeing, it's on the high balance loan amounts, you know, anything over $510,000 on the FHA conventional. Those are taking a little bit of a hit. The conventional world, which is a 5% down conventional, they're fine. Rates are still really good. Anything under 510 or below on FHA and VA, rates are still in the mid threes, guys. It's still cheap money to buy. The jumbo stuff, right? Like the $1 million, $2 million arena, they're being hit as well. Luckily, I guess for us, for the team and me, I speak for the team as well. That's not so much of our market, but I mean, those are the high-end stuff is getting hit more than the traditional standard stuff, which is, first-time home buyers, people that bought a home 2-3 years ago that they're upsizing to a bigger home. They build equity. They're putting down a big down payment. They're going conventional. They're not going FHA or VA. But overall, once again, I keep telling all my business partners and my clients this: whatever we're seeing right now is just temporary. I mean, the faster we can all go back to our normal routines of, going back to work in an office environment rather than staying home, the faster these guidelines are going to start losing up again, and the products will start coming back for the consumers. So if you're interested in buying a home, it's the right time to do it. Call somebody that you guys like or trust. I hope that we could earn that trust in business. We can get you set up in a consultation, but it's overall, on the mortgage side of things are starting to stabilize a little bit. Rates are not going up and then down and then up and then down. Right now they've been stable for the last 5 to 10 days. All right. So that's all I got for you guys on the mortgage side. Anything else you want to add, Javier?
I want to add a couple of things. I just wanted to let the people know we will continue every Monday to update everybody how's the market doing, and any news and how affecting or anything positive, so we can continue to inform our people. So just stay tuned in every Monday, 2 to 3 p.m. Pacific time. We will continue. Jesse will continue searching the market and see what is the updates, and we'll keep it us and see which direction we are and what is the best way to continue. So let's back to our program for today.
Yes. Without
I
further
have a
ado,
question for Jesse, actually. So my question for you, Jesse, is if you've been talking with buyers, are these buyers that were qualified before, or are they trying to get qualified now? And are they finding any difficulties with the qualification process now that, now that, we're sheltered in place and are...
Yeah, so I had some clients that I was working with currently. Unfortunately, like I said, the last time we were online, a couple of them, they were furloughed from their jobs. So unfortunately, they won't be able to purchase right now. But as soon as they are released and they're back to work, hopefully we can then take advantage of this situation, because I feel like it's going to take a few weeks after we start going back to work for the market to level off also. So they're all ready. They know what they have to do as soon as they start work again, and making sure that they stay in communication with their lender and me, so that we know that. Also trying to work with people to start getting pre-qualified with our lenders, like Alfonso, and get them ready to purchase as soon as they can be back at work. Just because you're not working doesn't mean you don't have everything else that you need to pre-qualify. So it's not any harder. Nowadays it's the same process. You can scan documents with your phone. You can scan them into your computer with your printer. There's multiple ways to do that. So it's not really hard to do. Again, we're just held back because of the job situation for most people right now.
And Alfonso, if you had someone that was pre-qualified previously, I know oftentimes people get pre-qualified maybe 3 months ago, and then, they start searching and they haven't found the ideal, their dream home yet. Do they need to reach back out to get re-qualified, given that things are changing a little bit?
yeah, we're looking at all those deals a lot more closely now, and we're staying engaged weekly with these qualified buyers that we have, Melissa. But honestly, I mean, as long as they're still employed, they're still working, they haven't purchased anything since the last time we've spoken, All we're really asking for is updated financials, such as the most recent 30-day pay stubs and the most recent bank statement, because we do not issue a pre-approval letter unless we have everything already in place, like W-2s, tax returns, bank statements, IDs, full applications, and we ask all the questions. So typically, we are following up with all of our pre-approved clients weekly on Wednesdays, and every 30 days we're asking them just to forward us the most recent 30-day pay stubs and bank statements. Now, if it's somebody that was qualified 3 months ago or 6 months ago, and they just decide to put everything on hold, then right now they want to reactivate everything, then yes, on those deals, I'm going to look at everything more closer. I am going to go through the full application to make sure that they're still employed where they told us they were employed. I am going to have to re-pull their credit because it's been more than 3 months. Request, maybe 2009 taxes and W-2 last year. So yeah, those will go to a more deeper dive as far as the financials. But like I said, typically, if people are active, we are calling I call them TBD Wednesdays. We call all of our pre-approved clients every single Wednesday. Sometimes they don't pick up the phone. We just simply leave a voicemail and just checking in on you, make sure that you guys are actively looking. If you are, please don't forget every last week of the month, forward me your pay stubs and your bank statements, and then that's how we're able to gauge if they're still really serious about buying a home. And obviously through the realtors, our partners, which they let us know, hey, we're showing homes this weekend, stuff like that. But yeah, that's what we're seeing.
That's interesting. Eder, Eder mentioned to me this morning that he showed some homes this weekend, so his experience was slightly different than it was in the past when he showed homes. So maybe it would be helpful to share that, Eder, if you're able to.
Yeah, definitely. I did show a couple properties yesterday, and I will be showing a couple today. Now it was very different. The clients were ready. They do want to buy, but just going inside these houses, it seemed like they had a little bit of in a way fear. I noticed, and the reason why I'm saying this is they're going into a house that they don't know. They don't know who lives there. They don't know if that person was, near someone or that might have had COVID-19. But I think the thing that got me the most was, and I know for a fact because the client I'm showing houses to today mentioned this to me. They're hesitant about the buying process, and I understand why, but it seems like sometimes we forget to mention that there's different forms that did come out, like the COVID-19 addendum documents that came out March 20th. The first one came out March 20th, and then the more recent ones came out, I believe about a week ago, a couple of days ago maybe. And what these forms do is this adds an extra layer of protection. And I tell these clients, don't be scared. Yes, I understand a lot's going on right now, but it's our job to protect you and to guide you properly from beginning to end. And I try to refresh that as much as I can, because I want them to trust me. I want them to know. I'm sure everybody wants them to know that they're safe from beginning to end in the process, from being pre-qualified with the lender to the moment they get their keys. So it was a little different. I noticed some hesitation, but I mean, with what's going on, it seems kind of understandable.
You said you had your kit too, right?
What was that?
You had your kit.
Oh, I had my kit. I had my disinfecting wipes, my disinfecting spray, gloves, what else? Hand sanitizer. I had it all. I was wiping everything from ground up.
You're a one-stop sanitizer shop.
Exactly. But yeah, it was interesting. But I mean, we just have to take extra precautions.
Yeah. Right. I agree. All right. Well, without further, let's get our guest speaker, Melissa Zavala. So this is some of the questions that we're seeing coming through our lines, from past clients, stuff like that. I own some rental property myself, so I want to make sure what is my rights as a landlord, what are my tenants' rights. So for owners, people that own real estate out there, and they rent it out, do they need to pay their mortgage? I mean, what option do they have as far as that you've heard from some of the properties owners that you manage from? For maybe, I don't know if you do any controlling of, do you actually pay the mortgage for them? I mean, what is the rights? What if they can't pay the mortgage?
So, well, basically, let me just step back and say, so we do a lot of property management at our office. We have multiple divisions at Broadpoint Properties. And so I'm not really as actively involved in the sales component, but much more with the property management division. And now that everyone's sheltering in place at home, despite the fact that property managers are definitely essential, we've obviously been very busy in this division because we have a lot of very anxious people. I mean, everyone in the whole world is anxious. So one of the things we've always said about real estate, and it's one of my favorite analogies, is that and I know that Jesse can super relate to this because of his past flying experience, but we are totally like a pilot. And sometimes you're on a plane and you're flying your plane, and I don't know anything about piloting a plane, but there's turbulence, and I'm sure the pilot does the very best to keep it as smooth as possible, but can't really control the amount of turbulence 100%. They can only make it as smooth as possible given the conditions. So that's kind of how we are in real estate, both in property management and in real estate, is that there might be hurdles in a transaction, whether in the lending part or from the buyer, from the seller, or in a property inspection or an appraisal, or of course now with the pandemic, if there's, or if there's trouble with tenants or owners or the property that they're renting. All we can do is to mitigate that and do the best we can to make it as stress-free as possible, but not guaranteeing that it's totally stress-free. So from the owner perspective, yes, we're getting a lot of questions about, do I have to pay my mortgage? What happens if my tenants do not pay the rent, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We don't pay mortgage payments at our office. We do make a lot of other payments for our owners, but we don't pay the mortgage payments principally because in the event that the payment, maybe the check got lost in the mail or something like that, we wouldn't want to have any sort of, from a risk management perspective, we wouldn't want to be accused of maybe a payment arriving late or anything like that. But we do pay most of the other bills for all of our owners, except for mortgage. So we have seen a lot of tenants and owners that hear bits and pieces of the news, but not the entire news segment, or they hear a bit maybe from a press conference from the president, and then you have to go really read the entire text to make sure you get the whole story. So with regard to your mortgage payments, well, you always have to pay your mortgage. At the end of the day, you have to pay your mortgage. But there are some sort of policies and procedures right now that will give you some kind of grace period on that, greater than the previous grace period of 30 days. So a lot of the banks are offering forbearance of up to 1 year. Most of what we're hearing about is 1, 2, or 3 months. But the best sort of forbearance, and forbearance just means delay. So the best sort of forbearance, and one that we saw a good chunk of during the last economic downturn, which was called the Great Recession. I don't know what this one's going to be called when we look at it in hindsight. But so the Great Recession, what we saw was that the 3 months forbearance would be put on the end of the loan. So if you had 25 years left on your mortgage, you would have 25 years in 3 months. Now what we're seeing is, yes, you don't have to pay your $2,000 mortgage payment this month, but on July 1st, you have to pay $6,000 instead of $2,000. So is that really a help? Maybe if you feel confident that you're going to have the $6,000 on July 1st, it is. Otherwise, it's not really. And me personally, that wouldn't really be very helpful. It's better to have smaller payments going up to it. But maybe if you're from a big family and you have 4 kids, maybe you're going to get $4,800 through the stimulus package that can help to offset that. So yes, you have to pay your mortgage, but the most important thing really is to speak with your lender and find out what is available to you. Now, depending upon the kind of mortgage you have, if it's government backed, then the federal mandate says that there will be no foreclosures and no evictions at this time. So even if you have like a Fannie Mae or a Freddie Mac or a VA or a USDA or any sort of government-backed or HUD loan, FHA, anything like that, you will not be foreclosed upon right now, but you can't you cannot evict your tenants. So from a property management standpoint, then we have to go contact each tenant that has each owner that has a mortgage and say, what kind of mortgage do you have? Because they might have hard money, or they might have no mortgage, or for some reason it might not be government backed. So that means that it doesn't apply to them. So yes, you have to pay your mortgage. You may be able to extend the payments. You might be able to get 12 months to figure it out. But that is kind of the answer to that question. So there's nothing at the local level with regard to mortgage payments. That's coming from the federal level, those kind of dictates and mandates.
In a nutshell, every single person that has a mortgage should literally call the 1-800 number, customer service, on your mortgage statement. That means you're calling that lender, which is the servicer, the people that are collecting the payment from us. We should all call individually, because one lender will have some restrictions, the other one will have some more flexibility, or option one, option two. So I get that as well, Melissa, obviously, because I'm in the lending world, and I am directing all my clients to call the servicer. I'm offering, hey, if you need some help, I'll give a three-way call with you to make sure you understand what they're talking about. But I'm advising them, I'm advising the same thing. Don't take that route unless you are really in need of that assistance, because you may not, that will benefit people right now. But in some cases, for example, you have that servicing lender is this, I don't want to say the name, but this bank. You may not qualify with that bank for another mortgage until you pay off those forbearance, that 1 month, 2 months, or 3 months, right? So you guys have to pay attention and really call your bank to find out really what are your options, and only take that route if you absolutely need it. If you got furloughed and you got laid off, and of course the money the same money's not going to be coming into your household, then of course you need it. But if you're still working, in essence, maybe you're not putting overtime, but you're still putting the 40 hours a week, and you can still keep up with your payments, because we do not know what impact this can really have at the end of the day, to be transparent.
So
right?
what you said, Alfonso, made me think of two different things. First off, and I didn't mention this before, is often what we saw the last time was at the end of the forbearance period, before they tagged it on the back, they would say, oh, you owe me $6,000. I can chunk it down and I'll just charge you $300 extra a month. And so on top of your mortgage payment of the $2,000, the example I gave earlier, it would be $2,300, and that $6,000 would be over, that many payments it would take to pay that off. But on the one hand, on the other hand, let's just say your tenant pays the mortgage, but you've been furloughed, but you know that in 3 weeks you're going to start to get, or 6 weeks, you're going to start to get that really nice, unemployment insurance package, which includes an extra $600 a week. Maybe you just need that to tide you over till you start getting your unemployment. Then, some people could be strategic in that way. But what I've seen across the board is that I've seen this in multiple areas. I've heard about it with people with unemployment insurance claims. I've heard about it with people making calls to their mortgage companies, is that the federal says, these are the policies, this is the package. But then you go to your local bank, or your local here, or your local there, and there's no applications yet to do that thing that's in the stimulus package, because it's like the boss says to do it, but the underlings haven't figured out how to bring it to the people yet. And we're not talking about just 10 people. We're talking about, there were 6 million unemployment insurance claims, in the last week or two in California alone. So we're talking about a lot of people that have been impacted by this. I think Javier had some percentages. What were you saying, Javier? Did you say 45% or something like that?
45%.
Yeah.
45%? Wow.
So yeah, well, considering we're all sitting at home right now, I mean, we are deemed essential, which is really great. But of course, we don't want to do anything to risk or compromise the health of our clients or anyone around us or our families. Because if we go out and we come back, we could make somebody at home sick too. We're not careful.
Just to add it to your conversation, Melissa and Alfonso, the key here is for any person when they call and contact the banks, just try to offer a plan too, so maybe they can coming back, because each individual is going to be depend upon who is the owner of the note is going to be the decision. So it's all related to that. So.
Right. So what Alfonso said earlier and what Javier brings up is the difference between. So one of the things that people don't ask or they don't realize often is that the person you pay your mortgage to, or the company that you pay your mortgage to, may not actually own the note. They may be hired as a servicing company, which means they have like zero decision-making power. They're just following some written guidelines. So a good question to ask is, are you who's the note holder? Are you the servicer? Or, so you need to figure out who the decision maker is if you plan to do some negotiating, so that you make sure you're talking to the right group. And that's challenging from a number of perspectives, because you've got a lot of people answering the phones now that are just like us. They've never experienced a pandemic before. I mean, there's been no pandemic in the world since 1918. So very few people very small percentage of people in the world were alive in 1918. And those people probably don't remember it because they were little, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. This is something new to everybody, not only the U.S. but in the world. So, I mean, we're figuring it out with you. I mean, yes, we have a little bit more of experience in the lending and real estate world, but the best thing is pick up the phone, ask a lot of questions. If you need some assistance, reach out to us. We're here to help you out either way. Okay. So awesome. Let's move on to the next question, Melissa. What happens if my tenants do not pay me the rent? So I own a property. And my tenants get laid off. Obviously, I can evict them. I cannot evict them, and they can't pay me the rent. What do I do as a landlord?
Okay, so there's not in California. There's actually not one easy answer to that question. Okay, and that's because I believe it was the week of March 20th, Governor Newsom put out what he called an eviction and foreclosure moratorium. And what he did initially was he changed something in the California Civil Code. So previously, the California Civil Code said that local governments had the right, when there was a state of emergency, in order to create a 30-day eviction moratorium. All right. But what Governor Newsom did was he said he changed that law temporarily to say that during this pandemic, local governments had until May, they could make an eviction moratorium until May 31st. All right. So I had all these calls when this went out, people saying, I don't have to pay my rent till May 31st. I'm like, hold on, let me go back and read. Let me call our company attorney. Let me figure this out. And I went back and I talked with a whole bunch of people and I called the attorney. And that's when I learned it's local. All he said was local governments are the ones that are going to make the rules, and they can make an eviction moratorium until May 31st. So now what that means is that now our responsibility as property managers, or an owner's responsibility, is they got to figure out, what is my local eviction moratorium? Because it's all, if you're in Santa Clara or Northern California, there's all these rules. So right now there are rules in like Chula Vista, there's a specific rule in San Marcos, there's a specific rule in Oceanside, there's a specific rule for unincorporated communities of North San Diego County. And depending on what that specific rule is, as a property manager now, if we have a tenant that doesn't pay the rent, we've got to figure out, okay, what are our rights? So typically in the past, we've provided a 3-day notice to pay rent or quit, and then we then we hire an attorney to do unlawful detainer action to remove the tenant in a typical eviction process. Obviously, first of all, nobody wants to evict anybody ever, whether it's during a pandemic or not. And, you know, like if you hashtag we are all in this together, we're in there too. We don't want to stay home. We don't want you to be out of work. But our job our job as property managers is not to be mean, is just to specifically follow the lease and the terms of the lease. And of course, if the law changes, then we need to follow the state law. So if a tenant doesn't pay the rent, for the tenants that haven't paid the rent, what we've been doing is we've been looking at the local ordinances depending upon which area, because we do the whole 78 corridor. So that includes a little bit of Oceanside, Vista, San Marcos, a lot of Escondido, Carlsbad, Valley Center, and each of those has different stuff going on. And then we reach out to each owner and say, hey, here's what the local ordinance is. But the bottom line is that everybody in almost everywhere in San Diego County, if your tenant doesn't pay the rent, you need to try and get as much as you can from them and try to set up a very, very short-term payment plan, because nobody's really going to be able to evict anyone until around June 1st. And then if you file that notice that I mentioned earlier to pay rent or quit, and then you collect money afterwards, that negates the notice. So when a person files a 3-day notice to pay rent or quit, and then they collect rent money, then the notice is void. So that voids the notice. So what we've kind of decided that we would do is we take it on a case-by-case basis, but we'll see where we are around May 31st, June 1st, and then we will file our 3-day notices. Because what's the point of doing it now? The courts are closed, and then that negates our ability to collect money. And of course, I want to get as much money as I can for my owners, right? Especially all of them. So in a few situations where our owners have owned the properties cash, we've been able to maybe make a few accommodations. We're having people tenants sign agreements. So we're really trying, but we're working case by case with the owners.
And so at the end of the day, Melissa, from what I'm hearing, great information. Thank you so much. So if I have a tenant in place, right? I mean, first of all, we all have to be more human right now, right? We all have to be more human, because I can also call the servicer for myself and say, hey, listen, I own all these real estate properties. I'm being affected by COVID-19. Let me postpone my mortgages. At the same time, then that frees me up a little bit to be more tolerant or more patient with my tenant. So I think more than anything, we have to unite as a country, and we have to be more human today. But what I'm listening, just to kind of recap or sum that response is, so yes, I cannot serve a notice to eviction until May 30th, right? But even if you did, and then I took $300 from my tenant, that is void, correct?
Correct.
So right now, the best thing for us to do is to be more understanding with their tenants, because they're going through the same thing we're going through, right? Collect as much as they can pay us, make a short term, say, okay, you owe me $1,000 for the month. I'm going to spread that over 3 months, right?
Right.
And then come May, let's be realistic. They probably don't have the $300 and the full month. So then I will collect as much as I can again, and then sum those two numbers together, divide them over 90 days, come up with a payment plan. And then at the first week of June, if they still don't pay, that's when I can then service or take other measures, correct?
Correct. Now, it also depends on where you are. So you should contact our office or contact our team, and we can help you out a little bit and give you more information. But there are certain parts of the county where it says that you can't you have to give them until like September 30th to pay back what they owe you. So
Okay.
that would negate your ability to file unlawful detainer action. So, but what I really also want to talk about, I know we were going to talk about tenants from a tenant perspective next, but what I really also want to mention is that everybody needs to be super resourceful. So if you're in a 2-bedroom place by yourself and you can only come up with half the rent right now, well, then maybe you need to consider getting a roommate, right? And then asking your landlord if you could add a roommate to the lease. Because not only we're talking about being resourceful by calling our mortgage lenders and asking for forbearance and figuring out ways to collect as much as possible and seeing what kind of stimulus money we're going to get. But tenants also need to be resourceful and also very understanding, because one of the things we haven't talked about is repairs. Because right now we're only able to do, or we only want to do emergency repairs, you know, things that are related to health and safety and obviously damage
Help
of
with the cash
property.
flow, right? Just to keep up with the cash now.
Exactly, because we really don't, and we want to only be sending in licensed folks with insurance in order to do that, because the risk to all parties is just much higher than it normally is.
Right. Listen, you guys heard it. If you guys own real estate rentals out there, contact me. Guys, we'll get her information here shortly. She has a ton of experience. She has staff in her office. She has resources. She has attorneys in place that she can help us find those as, you know, property owners and landlords out there. Okay, so awesome. Thank you so much, Melissa. That's helpful. Let's go on to the next slide, Eder. What's up for renters? So I'm a renter, right? So you kind of touched that already on the previous slide. So what are my rights as a tenant? Skip a month or 2 or 3 months, or what is reality? What are my options as a tenant?
So you cannot just like skip. Absolutely not, because all of those guidelines I already spoke about are very specific about, and they have very limited time frames. So many of them, is today the 6th already? Some of them say that within 7 days of the day the rent is due, you must provide proof that you're unable to pay the rent. Proof is not just a quick email, okay? Proof. So a letter saying that you're furloughed, your application to unemployment insurance, so whatever that kind of proof that you need to provide. So for those people, if you're listening to this and you can't pay your rent and you haven't contacted your property manager and you live in one of those communities, on the 8th, you are automatically exempted from any sort of forgiveness. So the best way to protect yourself is to be extremely proactive. And I can tell you from a property management perspective, we definitely appreciate, I mean, we're anxious every day. Like, you know, we were, especially before the 1st, we were super anxious, like, oh my God, who's not gonna be able to pay the rent? You know, how are we gonna break it to our owners and all of that stuff? But we definitely appreciated so much those tenants that reached out to us to try to work something out before the 1st of the month. We just really, it's very hard emotionally for everybody. So, but we were really, really grateful to those people that had the courage to step up and just have that conversation with us. And we were able to find good results for every single person that's reached out to us that I think everybody was pleased with. So
you're right. I mean, I'm talking about being more human, right? If I own some rental property, you know, I got to be more human with my tenants. But it's right what you're saying. The tenants themselves, you know, you have to be resourceful. No, don't just ignore the reality, because if I'm an investor, if I own some properties, I will be way more understanding if those tenants are being proactive, like you're saying, Melissa, and calling you and saying, hey, my husband's hours got cut. He's still working, but he's not working 45 hours. He's only working 30 hours a week. I know my rent is $1,500. Is there any way I can only give you $1,000? And then, you know, what are my options? So I think any landlord will be like more open and willing to help in those situations than those tenants that just don't face reality, don't return phone calls, don't call your landlord. You know, that window is going to be this small to get in there, correct?
correct. You got it.
All right, cool. Thank you for answering that. Question number 2, what are the consequences, right? I call you, I can't pay the full amount. Do I have any consequences for not paying, for only giving you partial rent?
Well, basically, if we can't enter, okay, I'm not an attorney, so I guess you should, someone should really get legal. A tenant might want to get legal advice, but that's of course expensive oftentimes. So I can't speak about all the consequences, but I can say that if you don't enter into some written agreement with your landlord as to how you're going to pay back and when you're going to pay back, then you're putting yourself at risk of having unlawful detainer action or eviction, maybe on June 1st, maybe on October 1st. I don't know. It just depends on where you are, where you reside, where the home is. But I think anytime that you enter into that written agreement, then you are protecting yourself and you're also setting an expectation. So you're developing an exit strategy for the problem. And if you don't, you might put yourself at risk legally.
So now I just heard you as you were talking, in regards to the landlord. I'm a tenant. So what I'm taking from this is this. So if I enter an agreement with the landlord, hey, I'm gonna pay you half for April. I already know May is gonna be the same situation unless I go back to work. So let's work this deal out where I give you half and half. And I'll pay you the remaining balance, which will be, $1,500. I'll split that over July, August, and September, right? We're hoping by then. I'll pay you that, spread that over that. If we agree on that, being devil's advocate, that means that my landlord cannot take me to court or start the eviction process come, June 1st or the end.
Whatever date, you're right, because you put an amendment to your lease in writing.
Okay, perfect. And I think that's the most educated decision that a landlord or tenant can do, because, who wants to go, nobody enjoys kicking anybody out. It's ugly. It's like a divorce, right? Nobody likes to do those things. So it's like,
right, and it's expensive too. An eviction can be
money, right? So let's face reality. Let's unify ourselves as a country. Let's come up to the table. If you're a tenant out there, you're struggling. Document it. Hey, here's my application to unemployment. Here's the proof that we lost one income because my husband or myself got furloughed, right? They'll work with you. There's rights to you as a tenant, but pick up the phone, be proactive, be resourceful. That's what we're inviting you to do. Call Melissa, ask her some questions. We're here to help out. We're just giving you guys information for things that we're not making this up. Melissa's getting phone calls like this day in and day out, right, Melissa?
Oh, I'm sure I've gotten like 20 text messages when I've been on this call. I did want to ask Javier to kind of chime in because I wanted to see if he had anything to add, because of course, now that we're working at home, he's in the next room, so he can eavesdrop and he knows what I've been going through. So he probably has a lot to add, and maybe he could talk a little bit about, from an investor's perspective. For example, we have a listing of 2 units right now, and on that listing, actually, the tenants paid the rent. So that's a phenomenal buy because we've got these people in place, and it must be essential employees, right? Because they were able to pay the rent, which is wonderful. But I'm just wondering, because I've already seen a lot of emails from those investors that are looking for like 50 cents on the dollar investments or things like that. And of course, it's kind of sad because nobody really wants to take advantage of anybody at such a time like this. But at the same time, investors can sometimes step in when there's a difficult situation. So I don't know if Javier can speak to either from a
right now I have a couple of people call me already and regarding about what is the best way to be 100% to buy the right property for investor side, knowing like right now you guys already talk about people cannot pay the rent sometimes, etc., etc. So what I recommend too is, first of all, contact the listing agent for information, see what is the rent, what is the tenants. I know you cannot say if they working, what is the kind of job they have, but the agent can tell you a little bit more. Like for example, you mentioned the 2 units we have, they pay the rent, great return, perfect to buy. So it's people right now investing. So it's a good opportunity. The other side, like you say, it's a lot of people trying to call and see if it's going to be an opportunity for investors. The only I can say, the NOVs is increased before in the beginning of the year, so it looks like it's going to be a big notice the default coming back in maybe in September, October, November, that quarter, and it's going to be opportunity for them. But I don't think it right now is the case, because right now is no opportunity to foreclose in the investment. So for somebody want to buy a property right now and looking for investment, the best way is to looking for properties with tenants inside and see the return.
Ask for the rent rolls, because the rent roll. You're not going to be able to evict a bad tenant right now.
The history too. If that's the case, and in a case like you have a rental, like a house, like single house, and you just rented last month, I think that rental is going to be safe because the people already they have the money to afford that. So I think that would be a safe opportunity. And,
Yeah, I mean, and also it's never too early to start to look at some options. So if there's investors out there looking to buy and take advantage of, some deals that will come up, we will see some good deals in the next, in my personal opinion, the next month or the next 12 months. I think there are going to be some great opportunities for people because some people may not be able to keep up with payments or stuff like that, right? So call Javier. He has a ton of experience. I mean, I met Javier. I'm not embarrassed to say it. 2008, Javier, right, when you helped me short sell my condo. Remember that? And the way that Javier presented the options in such a professional manner, guys, it was unmatched. I'm telling you, not because he's my business partner today, but he has a phenomenal team. Eder, Jesse, his wife, that helps manage the investments and the rentals and all that stuff. And there's a ton of experience here between all of us that we can point you in the right direction. So if you're an investor looking to put in some money, it's never too early to start looking at your options. So reach out to us, and Javier and I will be more happy to sit down with you once this goes by, or we can have Zoom meetings or conversations and see what you're looking for. I'm sure if it's not out there, Javier and the team will help you find it. All right. So, we've come up to the end of our presentation today. The last question here was, if I'm impacted by COVID-19, what should I do? I think we've covered that, Melissa, right?
We did answer that, but I just wanted to add one quick thing about what we're doing now, because we do have about 5 vacancies, because we just had move-outs. We actually had 3 move-outs at the end of March, which was kind of like, oh my God, what a terrible time to have to move, right? But they were already scheduled to move out, lease endings. But what we kind of, we decided what we're going to do. Of course, we require all sorts of income documentation. We use third-party screening for new tenants when we prepare the property. But we're also going to, even if we verify the income right now and then they move in 3 weeks, we're going to re-verify the income 3 days before they move in. So that way, if we verify after they move in, it's kind of moot, but at least in that way, we're doing the best that we can to make sure that the tenant's going to be able to pay the rent after placement.
That's a great point. That's what's happening in the lending world right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Before we used to verify employment at the beginning, then 10 days prior to closing, we had to re-verify. Well, now that 10-day window just got shrunk to literally 24 hours before funding or dog drawing, because what happened, what's available today, it's not available in the afternoon. When people are working today, they may be furloughed tomorrow. So,
exactly.
That's a great.
I have a question, and I know almost we finished here, but just came to my mind. What happened if I am a tenant? I already give you the notice, and I'm supposed to deliver the property on the end of the month, and unfortunately I cannot move because the property I'm supposed to move is not ready, or the people supposed to move is not moving out. So what is my situation? I would be homeless in that situation, Melissa, or what do you think in this situation?
Well, you personally are not going to be homeless. That I know, but so what we've been doing is actually, because of those move outs, we hadn't placed new tenants in those properties. So around when the situation started to escalate in the middle of the month, we reached out between the 15th and the 20th of the month to all the tenants that we had that were moving out. And we said, hey, are you still on schedule to move out at the end of the month? And so we tried to kind of engage them in a very soft and gentle manner. And they were already people who had found new places. And I guess, they all moved out. But what our plan was, we had one family that didn't find a place yet. And they were asked to move out at the end of April, and they came in and they said, we really can't. And spoke with the owner, and we decided, okay, I had them actually just sign a month-to-month extension, and and they'll probably move out in the summer. But what do they say? The devil that you know is often better than the devil that you don't know. So in that case, we felt.
Is that why you stick to Javier? Is that what you're stuck to, Javier? Because we'd rather keep them.
The devil that I know. Exactly. I want though. I know I don't look it, but I've been married for, I believe, this year I will be married 30 years.
Wow.
So,
Congratulations.
yes. So I really know the devil very well at this
You guys are, and I mean it. You guys are definitely a true inspiration for me. And you know, I've been married for 13 years or more than 14. So that's awesome. You know, that's awesome. Yeah.
I can't believe I'm old enough to have been married 30 years. Is that crazy?
Melissa, I have a question. So, as a landlord that wants to rent a property, what precautions or what do I need to do to be able to show the property right now? Or what suggestions do you have?
That's
or
a
what
great
is the office doing to show property right now?
So that is a super good question, and I'm glad you asked. And I'm just going to share what we're doing in our office, and maybe people can kind of imitate some of those procedures. First of all, we're only showing vacant homes. We're not showing occupied homes. Then we're showing them one at a time. So our assistant who does the showings, she's going with gloves and masks and Clorox wipes. And so she goes in first and she cleans the doorknob and she opens the front door. And then she basically waits in her car, and then they go through the house, and then with social distancing, as long as it's not raining, I guess today it's raining, then they can have a conversation and get any of their questions answered out in daylight, you know, not inside the home. And then she will lock up and redo the doorknobs again. We also have we have a little kind of like a hold harmless agreement that we're texting them, and anybody can write up their own, that they understand, that they guarantee that they don't have the virus, they don't have the virus symptoms. Of course, if you're asymptomatic, you wouldn't know if you had the virus unless you were tested, that they're not going to touch anything when they're inside, and that they understand that they're going in at their own risk. And then we text it to them, and they have to respond and say that they agree to the terms and conditions before they walk in the door of the home. And so far so good. We've actually rented 2 units that way. And we just have to space the showings about a few minutes apart, so only one party is in there at a time. So that's how we've been handling it. Any feedback or thoughts and ideas, of course, are greatly appreciated. This is, like I said before, this is new for us too, and that's what we felt would be the best way to protect everybody.
Let's do like the groceries, right? Like we put a sticker 6 feet apart so people can stand outside feet apart. Right? But you're right. I mean, we all gotta take care of ourselves. You know, right? So we can't afford to get sick. We can't afford to pass it on to anybody else. So
Dixie's here. She's like,
yeah.
She's like, oh, it's almost lunchtime. Hurry up.
Awesome. So let's recap real quick, Melissa. What can they do during this? You know, they're being impacted by COVID-19, whether a landlord or a tenant. What can they do?
They need to call their property manager, or their tenants need to call their property manager if they're having struggles immediately, because remember, they only have 7 days before they're exempted in certain parts of the county. And owners, if you're self-managing landlord, then you should really review this video. I pretty much gave you the steps to resolve your situation. Try and put something in writing with your tenants. Engage them in a friendly, not aggressive way. I know you're stressed out, but believe me, your tenant wants to pay the rent just as much as you want to collect the rent. So,
servicer, right, to see what their options are.
Oh yes, and thank you for coaching me. Yes, and obviously be very proactive about calling your mortgage servicer or your direct lender.
And overall, I think the key to all this thing is pick up the phone and ask the questions, and somebody with the experience will give you the answer, right? So be proactive. Don't hide behind the door of the phone.
And anybody in California that's watching this, even if you're not in San Diego County, if you have questions, you can contact our office. Our phones are being forwarded right now, but somebody will call you back and try and support you in any way that we can.
Melissa, I do have one question. So earlier when we were talking about investing, about purchasing income properties such as rentals of 2 units, what if throughout the whole transaction I am led to believe that the renters, I know that they have their steady job, or I'm led to believe that they have their steady job, the rent is coming in monthly. What if once the closing comes in, that very first month that I own the the property, the units, the rents will just completely stop. Does that go back to what if we can't pay the rent?
I mean, yeah, from an owner perspective, I mean, what are their rights? So they're taking, I mean, there is risk too, because they're getting the tenant as is. So if they've gotten all the truthful information from the previous owner, then there's really they have no recourse against the previous owner. Depending on where they were located, of course, if they couldn't make an arrangement, I would just ultimately try and move that tenant out as gracefully as possible, to reclaim that unit and then rent it to a qualified unit. And that is the risk for investors right now. But since there's so many opportunities for investors right now, and investors often are willing to accept some risk in order to get into a good deal, I think.
But I think it's going to be also a situation when the buyer is going to be owner occupied, and that's a question for Alfonso. What is going to happen if the tenant for the property is cannot pay for the mortgage, for the rent, and then the people not qualified for the purchase? So how you guys going to handle that problem?
Well, no, unless you're talking if the tenant doesn't pay the rent, how can that affect them buying a home?
I think he's asking about a duplex. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, like a duplex, yeah.
One rents the other, and what happens if your second rent isn't being collected? Are you doing after closing or before closing, Javier?
I say before closing.
Right.
When you open the contract, everything is fine. You have the tenant pay, and let's say you open a contract in the 15th, so you supposed to close to the next month to the 15th, so the people need to pay the rent. They cannot pay the rent, so and the lender is using the income for the rent.
You're always putting me to think, Javier. That's why I'm losing here. Okay? That's a heck of a question there. That's a heck of a question. I would definitely think that it would definitely affect the transaction for sure, right? Because obviously, if it gets disclosed to the lender, it gets disclosed to escrow, and rabbits out of a hat, you have to disclose that, right? So if the tenant's not paying the rent, the buyer can at that point say, hey, listen, if that guy doesn't pay the rent, I can still qualify with the entire mortgage payment. I'll still buy it. Then that'll move forward, right? Whenever you're using rent to qualify to buy a home, we are going off the current lease agreement, whatever that lease amount is, or if it's vacant, we're telling the appraiser, hey, listen, do a rental comparisons in the area. Tell me how that unit how much can it rent out for? And we take 75% of that rental income to account for vacancies. So the lenders are not given 100% of the $2,000 rental income that they're receiving for unit number 2. We're only giving them 75% of that $2,000, considering the things like that can happen. So thinking it through with what I just told you, I think we're still fine. It's more so the buyer, me as the buyer, saying, hey, I'll still buy it regardless, because I know I can afford to still make the whole payment without getting the rent from the tenant. It's still a good deal. I want to move forward. So if the tenant stops paying for the transaction, it will not affect it as long as the buyer is willing to move forward and pay the mortgage. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Perfect. Awesome. So next week, like Javier was saying earlier, we're going to be back next week, 2 to 3. Next week, what are your options? What options are available if you can't make your mortgage payment, right? Like, let's say you've passed parents' state and then you still can't catch up or stuff like that. We're going to be talking about obviously what are the procedures that most lenders, do, right, Melissa? Such as short sales, unfortunately foreclosures,
loan modification, deed in lieu of foreclosure, cash for keys, all sorts of stuff like that.
Although we hope that that's not an issue for any of you guys watching, we also know that could be a reality for some of us. Okay,
so we definitely don't want that. No.
We don't want it, but we want to cover some of those options if it does definitely come down to it. So Thank you guys for joining us. That's all I got for you guys. Team, you guys want to say anything else?
I just want to say thank you, and we'll see, and we will talk next week. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
See?
Stay safe, stay healthy out there. Follow the guidelines that are in place by the government, and let's try to get this all over with, and we can go back to normality.
Yep. You guys are
The new normal, right, Jesse? We'll go back to the new
I
normal.
don't like this new normal. Let's go back to the old normal.
Good. Well, I'll need it's like Eder. Thank you so much for inviting me to join you guys. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you for joining us, Melissa. We'll hope to have you back with us to give you to pick your brain. You have tons of knowledge. There is our contact information. If you have any lending questions, contact me. My information is right there. We have Javier, Eder, and Jesse. Any real estate questions, buying or selling, call them. Property owners, tenants, call Melissa for any of your tenant questions or landlord questions. She has a ton of knowledge. And we all hope, honestly, that you guys like the presentation that we put together for you guys. These are literally live questions that are happening right now to us in our business. So give us a thumbs up, like it, share it. I know you may be watching this on a replay. So please share the link. We're here to be of service to you guys in any way, shape, or form. All right. So that's all I got.
All
Thank
right.
you guys.
Have a good one, everybody. Bye.
Bye bye.